From annoying the entire den by constantly talking over everyone to two property guys refusing to accept their drowning business model, here are some of the craziest Dragon's Den contestants ever. Let's kick things off with Rascal Dog's litter box. You don't always get to see mind-blowing entrepreneurs in the den, and the dragons have to deal with some cringy, cocky, and crazy contestants. Mina Kalia was one of those contestants who managed to make the entire den uncomfortable with her constant chattering. The pitch started off like any other with Mina and her husband Tim, along with their business partner Trisha, pitching their portable litter trays for dogs. But 5 minutes into the pitch, Mina just kept going on and on, talking over both her husband and Trisha. The dragons asked him a question, and as soon as he'd start speaking, Mina would rudely interrupt and start talking over him, trying to answer the question herself. It got so bad at one point that she didn't even let the dragons complete their questions and just kept chattering about her litter trays. Deborah Meaden, Theo Paphitis, and Duncan Bannatyne all pointed out how she should try to stay quiet and let her partners answer the questions, but she just wouldn't get it. She'd hold off for barely 2 minutes before trying to control the conversation again, and on one occasion, she even told the dragons to not ask her husband any questions because he has no idea what he's talking about. It was honestly really cringy to watch, and I can't even imagine what Mina must have thought if she ever watched the episode herself. Oh, and the comments on this episode were hilarious. One user commented how this was probably the greatest 20 minutes of Tim's life, since everyone was telling his wife to stop talking over him. But here's someone who probably should have talked a bit more. What really gets to me is when someone with a decent product ruins everything because of their attitude. That's exactly what Eddie Middleton did while pitching his innovative range of patio heaters. The range was awesome. Not only was it environmentally friendly, but it also had a ton of safety features, making it a standout product. Eddie started off exceptionally well. He was calm, collected, and knew his business inside out. He was asking the dragons for £225,000 in return for 15% of his company. But once Duncan started his interrogation, things took an ugly turn for the local entrepreneur as he boldly refused to share some important insights into his business and told the dragons to not ask such questions to protect his customer base. Now, I get where he's coming from, but Eddie was on something else that day in the den. And Duncan immediately got out of the deal, not wasting a single second. The rest of the dragons tried getting to Eddie, hoping he'd realize that refusing to share the numbers could cost him the opportunity. But nope, he just wouldn't get it. Eventually, it got to the point that Theo told him he's extremely rude, arrogant, and insulting since he's wasting everyone's time. Still, he was professional about it, unlike the founder of the Big O Bar, Alex Hall. Who on earth starts a business pitch with a long sigh? The energy levels were seriously lacking in this one. Alex was trying to penetrate the pub and bar market with her exclusive range of olive snacks, set to take the industry by storm. When the dragons got their hands on the product, they were actually blown away by the awesome packaging and an innovative storage bar. But when things got serious, Hall just completely folded, started dodging questions and talking back to the dragons. At one point, they asked her to talk a bit about her business and how it could grow in the future. And when you're asking for a sweet £150,000 investment, you've got to prove your worth to the dragons. But what did Alex say? Well, her proof of business was that their company phone never stops ringing. That's pretty comforting. Theo also got involved in the action and asked her how much of these olive snacks she sells in a day. Want to know how she answered? She went on and on about how one location could sell one maybe every 3 days, but the busy city pubs might even sell 50 a day. But how much did she really sell per day? 1. Yep, she sold 1 snack a day, and it took the dragons 15 minutes of questioning to get that out of her. But the worst part, because her supplier was from Spain, she ended up blurting out how Spanish people were dishonest and inconsistent. But even Alex has got nothing on these two entrepreneurs with terrible attitudes. Jude Camplin and Chrissy Shaw came into the den offering a 20% share in 2 of their companies. The pitch was actually a bit shaky at the start, But once Chrissy took over, she gave it direction and managed to grab the attention again as she beautifully detailed their businesses. But when the interrogation started and Theo asked whether the Dragons would be buying into 20% of both companies, that's where things went wrong. The two entrepreneurs said the Dragons would get 5% of one company and 15% of the other. That makes zero sense. What if one company's worth $100,000 and the other's only £100? It's just not the right way to structure a deal. And when Theo explained to them that it's not the way things work, Jude replied by saying, "Thank you, we are women." Or in other words, she thought the dragon was trying to mansplain something, when in reality he was only letting them know that that's not the correct way to value a business. But after that statement, a fight broke out in the den, with Bannatyne calling the entrepreneur out for her terrible attitude. Deborah tried to set things straight by giving them another chance to start over, but it was even worse than the first time. She kept talking back to the Dragons, became extremely defensive, and even hyped up her business like it was a huge market success, even though she hadn't started trading yet. But hey, at least they knew what gross profit is, right? Because Fiona Houston came into the den valuing her business at a massive £3 million. And you know which dragon starts breathing fire when it comes to high valuations, right? Peter Jones. Peter immediately started asking questions to understand why Fiona thinks her business is worth a whopping $3 million. Well, let's just say she didn't really have an answer. And when Peter asked her what her gross profit is, she had no idea what to say and just stared right back at the dragon, trying to ask him the relevance of that question. Jones started to have doubts and asked the entrepreneur whether she even knew what gross profit was. And guess what? She had no clue. Deborah eventually had to step in to defuse the situation, but it only got worse from there. Fiona got super defensive and thought she'd done absolutely nothing wrong, even though she kept slamming Peter for asking her all the right questions. Oh, and some context on her business: she sells seaweed. Don't confuse that with the other one, because I'm not gonna lie, I think that's what's actually been going on, considering how poorly this pitch went. And it wasn't even a bad business, it's just that Fiona was just too defensive to answer any questions. Anything the Dragons threw at her was just met with something bizarre. I wouldn't say she was the craziest contestant, but her lack of understanding of her own business was terrifying. Still, it wasn't nearly as bad as Realtor Network Limited. Richard Williams and Gil Ostrander had quite the business model, as they pitched the Dragons 20% of their company for £50,000. It started well, with both entrepreneurs holding their ground against the dangerous Peter Jones. But as soon as Theo took over the questioning, things took an ugly turn, as Ostrander went all out in the hopes to sell his business. While Theo was talking, Gil interrupted him, forcing the dragon to remind him that he's not finished talking yet. The entrepreneur fired back by telling Theo that he wasn't done either, and midway through the conversation, he repeatedly started asking whether it was his turn to talk yet. But everything went sideways when Pfaphitis ripped apart his business, causing all the Dragons to ditch the opportunity and send the property guys home. So, from Gil Ostrander getting a shut-up call from veteran dragon Theo, to Mina from Rascal Dog's litter box doing all the talking, these were some of the craziest contestants ever.